Here's our overview for Mission 1, Lesson 10. Our student objective for this lesson is to use place value understanding to round multi-digit numbers to any place value using real-world applications. In simpler terms, we are rounding, we are continuing to round, and we are going to be given some story problems in there where we are asked to round. So it's rounding, being able to round, and being able to think how to round and when to round given different story problems or application problems. So I just want to focus on the rounding again, because you're going to be asked to round again. So it's just further expanding on what you've been doing the past couple lessons. Okay. So if we are given a number, this number, 138,762, and we might be asked to round to the thousands spot with it. Okay, so I'm going to go back to what I did. What number's in the thousands spot? Okay, it's the 8. Okay, so I know it's either, if I go back to my vertical number line here, it's either going to round up to 139,000 or it's going to round down to 138,000. And what's halfway in between there? 138,500. Because remember, 5 is always halfway. And if we're dealing with 1,000, what's halfway between 0 and 1,000? It's 500. Okay. And then, again, I can tell you that trick. If you look to the right of it, the place value that's a little lower than that's one below it, that'll tell us whether to round up or down. We can also use the vertical number line. So if I see there's a 7, well, essentially what we're doing is the same thing. If I ask you to place that here, I know that 700 is greater than 5. That's why it goes above there. It's greater than that 500. Okay, and 7 is greater than 5. So that tells us that this number is going to round up because it's greater than the halfway point. So 138,762 rounded to the nearest thousands place is 139,000. We might be given that same number, 138,762, but now we're asked to round to the nearest 10,000s spot. We're asked to round to the nearest 10,000s. So same number, but rounding to a different place value. So that's my 10,000 spot now. The 3 is in my 10,000 spot. Okay. So it's either going to round up to 140,000, or it's going to round down to 130,000. And what's halfway between? 135,000. Notice the halfway point is always the 5 there. It's the place value below whatever you're rounding to, it's the 5. Okay. So, and it's 138,000. So we can do this two ways, on the vertical number line or using that trick I gave. So if I look to the place value directly below it, it's an 8. Is 8 greater or less than 5? It's greater. It's probably going to be around here. So does that tell us that we want to round up or we're going to round down? Well, it rounds up because it's pretty close to 140,000. It's above that halfway point. It's closer to 140,000 than it is to 130,000. So if we're rounding 138,762 to the nearest 10,000, that's going to be around 140,000. And we might be given that same number, 138,762, and now asked to round to the nearest 100,000. So again, it's the same number, but we're just being asked to round it to different place values. And so in this case, my hundreds place value is that 1. So it's that 100,000. So that's either going to round up to 200,000 or it's going to round down to 100,000. And what's halfway in between there? Well, 150,000. Okay. Now, again, I can look to the place value directly below it. So in this case, if I'm rounding to the 100,000s, I'm looking at the 10,000 spot, which is the place value directly below it, to determine if I round up or down. So I see that's a 3. Is 3 greater than or less than 5? 3 is less than 5. So we're really thinking that's like 130,000. It's going to fall right around here, okay? Which tells us, and again, that 3 tells us that we round down because it's closer. It's not over halfway. It's not more than 5. It's below 5. So we round down. So if we're rounding 138,762 to the nearest 100,000, that's going to be about 100,000. What you notice is when you're rounding this same number to different place values, the smaller the value, the place value that you round to, the more accurate or close your number will be to what the actual number is. Okay, the greater that you round that number to, a place value that round the number to, the farther away you get from it. Okay, so what does that mean? You notice with 100,000, if we're rounding 138,762, if we're rounding it to the 100,000, we're either rounding it to 100,000 or 200,000. And that can be farther away from that 100,000 or from the original number. Whereas when we rounded it to the nearest, let's say we were rounding it to the nearest hundredth spot. If we're rounding to the hundredth spot there, well, that's either going to round up to 138,800 or 138,700. Okay. And 138,750. And if I look directly below it, it's a 6, which is greater than 5, which puts us right here. So it's going to round up. Why I'm showing you this is you can see the lower place value that we round to, so in this case it was the hundreds, the closer we stay to the actual number, the more accurate, especially when we start estimating here, the more accurate of an estimation that we're going to have. Okay, so if you want a better estimation using rounding, round to a lower place value. The higher the place value you round to, if you're estimating, the further away you get from that actual number. It's going to be less accurate. Okay, so we're just working on those rounding skills again today, and you're going to be given some application problems, some story problems to utilize those too, but the skills that you're using do not change. You just have to think about what the story problem is asking you to do and use these rounding skills.